Okay, so let's maybe forget what we think we know about decentralized tech for a moment. Because, while everyone's focused on the usual blockchain stuff, there's this other project, IOTA, that's been quietly building something, well, pretty different.
Yeah, definitely different.
We're going to dive into IOTA today. It's the crypto aiming to, power this whole machine-to-machine economy. And their angle, no blocks, no miners, zero fees.
Which is quite a statement in this space, right?
Well,
Given how bogged down things can get with scalability and costs.
exactly. So the big question we're trying to unpack here is IOTA like a hidden gem with huge growth potential? Or are there maybe some fundamental problems it just can't overcome? We've gone through a pretty detailed YouTube analysis to pull out the key stuff you need to know.
Right.
We'll look at this Tangle thing, their vision for the Internet of Things, the challenges they've had, this core-to-side solution they're working on.
Which is crucial.
Absolutely. And then some realistic price predictions, for the next few years, and the pros and cons if you're thinking about investing.
The idea is to give you a clear picture without, hopefully, getting totally lost in the technical weeds.
Yeah, let's try and make sense of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so this unconventional approach, where do we start? The tech.
Yeah, I think the Tangle is the place to start because it really does throw out the rule book. No linear chain of blocks, no mining like Bitcoin or Ethereum.
Right.
Instead, IOTA uses what they call the Tangle. You can sort of picture it like a web, maybe, or a graph, where every new transaction has to validate two older ones that came before it.
Huh.
Technically, it's a directed acyclic graph, a DAG. That's the jargon.
Okay, so wait. If every transaction validates others, it's like the network participants are doing the work just by using it.
Pretty much, yeah. You make a transaction, you contribute a tiny bit of work confirming previous ones. No need for specialized miners burning tons of electricity.
Okay, that sounds efficient. What are the big advantages coming out of that structure?
Well, the headline benefit is zero transaction fees. None.
Zero. Really?
Yep. And think about the vision. Billions of devices, maybe your fridge ordering milk, making tiny payments. Even a fraction of a cent per transaction adds up massively and kind of breaks the model. IOTA avoids that completely.
Right. For microtransactions, that's huge.
The other big potential is scalability. In theory, and this is important, in theory, the more transactions happening, the more validations occur, so the network could actually get faster, not slower.
That's completely counterintuitive to how most blockchains work, isn't it? Usually more traffic means slower speeds, higher fees.
Exactly. It's designed so that activity strengthens the network. It's a different kind of network effect.
And the source material we looked at really emphasizes this isn't just general-purpose crypto. It's specifically built for the Internet of Things, the IoT.
That's its core focus.
Can you give us a clear idea of what that machine-to-machine economy actually looks like in their vision?
Sure. Think about all the smart devices we're starting to see and imagine way more of them. Your smart fridge literally paying the grocery store for milk when it runs low. Your EV automatically paying the charging station.
Without you doing anything.
Precisely. Or like industrial sensors on a factory floor making real-time payments for data streams or resources. The idea is seamless, autonomous transactions between machines.
Okay.
The analysis mentioned examples like a delivery drone paying landing fees at an airport automatically, or your car paying a smart parking meter directly. All tiny amounts, all happening constantly without fees.
It's moving beyond just people sending money to each other, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's machines having their own little economy.
Exactly. And the video we checked out really stressed that this laser focus on the machine economy is what sets IOTA apart.
From other crypto projects that might dabble in IoT.
Yeah. While others might see IoT as an application, for IOTA, it's the application. The feeless structure is just fundamental to enabling that high volume of tiny transactions. That focus is definitely a differentiator.
But, okay, it sounds good in theory. But the journey hasn't been smooth sailing, has it? The video didn't shy away from that.
No, not at all. And it's important to acknowledge that there have been, technical bugs in the past, times the network actually had to be paused.
Paused, like stopped.
Yeah, which obviously isn't ideal for a decentralized network. There were also some early issues with user wallets being difficult or insecure.
Right. And then there was this thing called the coordinator. That sounded like a big deal, kind of controversial.
It was and still is to some extent. So early on, when the Tangle was smaller and maybe more vulnerable, the IOTA Foundation ran a special node, the coordinator. You could think of it like training wheels or a central checkpoint.
Right.
It added an extra layer of confirmation to transactions to prevent certain attacks. It provided security, but...
But it's centralized, right? Having one entity effectively overseeing things.
Exactly. That goes against the whole point of decentralization, which is removing single points of failure or control. So it was always meant to be temporary, but it became a major point of criticism.
Understandably. So how are they fixing that, this coordicide thing the video mentioned?
Right, coordicide, literally, killing the coordinator. It's their massive, ongoing project to upgrade the network so it can run securely and reach consensus without that central node.
It sounds complicated.
Oh, it is. It involves fundamental changes to how nodes agree on the state of the tangle. The source we reviewed rightly called it a make-or-break moment for IOTA.
Make or break.
Yeah. If they successfully implement coordicide, remove the coordinator, and prove the network is truly decentralized and secure, it silences a huge criticism and could unlock massive potential. But more delays or problems with it could really damage confidence.
Okay, that makes sense. It's a critical step. So bearing all that in mind, the unique tech, the big vision, but also these decentralization challenges, let's talk potential price. The analysis gave some forecasts. What about the near term, say, 2025?
Okay, so the analysis suggested a range for 2025 between about 60 cents and $1.10 per MIOTA token.
And compared to now, where it's, what, under 25 cents?
Yeah. Right, so that's a potential gain of roughly 150% on the low end, up to maybe 350% on the higher end.
What drives that potential jump?
It's really contingent on coordicide being successful. If that happens and enterprises start looking seriously again at IOTA for IoT projects, you could see that kind of renewed interest reflected in the price.
Okay, possible big jump if coordicide lands well. What about further out, like 2030? The numbers look even bigger there.
Yeah, the 2030 projections were much more bullish. The range mentioned was between $2.50 and $5.
Wow. Okay, that's, what, 900% to nearly 2,000% growth from current levels?
Potentially, yes. But that higher prediction relies on a much bigger if. It assumes IOTA doesn't just work, but actually becomes a core foundational layer for that machine-to-machine economy as it grows.
So if the whole vision of billions of devices transacting actually happens and IoT is the network they use,
then the demand for the MIOTA token could, in theory, drive the price up significantly.
And the video called these conservative estimates, which is interesting. What were they based on?
They pointed to existing partnerships. IOTA already has big names like Bosch, Jaguar Land Rover were mentioned. Also, their development roadmap progress, assuming coordicide succeeds, and just the general massive growth predicted for the whole IoT sector itself.
Okay, so let's pivot to someone listening who's thinking about this as an investment. What are the main upsides, the pros, that the analysis highlighted?
Well, number one is the feeless transactions. That's just a killer feature for micropayments, potentially.
Right.
Second, the Tangle's potential for scalability. If it works as designed, it could handle the massive transaction volume needed for IoT. Third, those existing enterprise partnerships do add some credibility.
They show serious companies are at least exploring it.
Exactly. Then there's the visionary use case itself. Targeting IoT is betting on a potentially huge future market. And finally, the current low price. It could be seen as a cheap entry point, assuming you believe in the long-term vision.
Okay, those are strong points.
Yeah.
But every investment has risks. What were the main cons or downsides raised?
The biggest one is probably the coordicide delays. They've been working on it for a while, and the repeated pushbacks have definitely led to some skepticism, some frustration.
People lose patience.
Understandably. Then the Tangle tech itself. It's novel, but it's also complex, maybe harder to fully understand, harder to audit than a standard blockchain, which could raise long-term security questions for some.
Right. Complexity can be a double-edged sword.
Definitely. And the project's history. Those past issues like wallet problems, the network halts, they still linger in people's minds and can affect trust.
And finally,
it just doesn't have that mainstream hype, does it? There's no big meme factor driving buzz like you see with some other coins. It's very tech-focused.
which brings up that interesting point, the video near the end. Sometimes the projects flying under the radar, the ones focused on fundamentals, turn out to be the most significant.
Yeah, that's a really important perspective. IOTA isn't really playing the short-term hype game. They seem focused on building this foundational infrastructure for machines to talk and transact.
So investing in it now is basically a bet on that specific vision becoming reality.
Pretty much. It hinges entirely on whether they can deliver on that promise of a decentralized, feeless network that powers the IoT. The analysis suggested that if they do pull it off, investing today could be, Potentially life-changing was the term used.
That's a bold claim, but it highlights the potential upside if the vision clicks. It's a stark contrast to, say, investing in a meme coin hoping for a quick pump.
Absolutely. It's about fundamental tech versus often just sentiment. IOTA is clearly betting on the former.
Right, so digging into this analysis shows a project with like a really unique approach, a huge ambition,
And a clear goal.
but also facing significant technical hurdles, especially around getting rid of that coordinator. Corticide really is the key, isn't it?
It seems to be the absolute linchpin, yeah. Success there could change the narrative completely. Failure or more significant delays could be very damaging.
Okay, so summing up, we've got the Tangle Fearless, potentially scalable DAG tech, the big vision powering the machine economy for IoT, the past struggles, and the make-or-break Corticide project for decentralization. And then these price predictions, showing big potential if it all comes together, balanced against the risks and delays.
Which leads us to a final thought, really. In this whole crypto space, which is often so loud and focused on quick gains, could a project like IoT that's maybe quieter, more focused on building something complex and, dare I say, smart, could that actually end up having a bigger long-term impact?
That's a great question to leave people with. Is the real value in the foundational tech, the stuff with a clear, real-world purpose, even if it takes longer to mature and get noticed?
Something to think about. Being informed, looking past the noise, that's often where the real opportunities might lie.
Definitely. Well, thanks for diving deep into this with us today. Hopefully that gives everyone a clearer picture of what IoT is all about.